A few years ago, I took a job at a state park in the Nashville Belmead area. I wasn't there long, only a few months. Early on, the groundskeeper, can't remember his actual job title, but he oversaw maintaining land ops, took me on a tour of the park in an old Kawasaki mule. The full park is divided into two parts and is made up of a few hundred acres of woods, trails, fields, a nature centre, an equestrian centre, and, surprisingly, a cave system. But more surprising were some of the stories he started sharing while we were driving around. They seemed to get progressively more disturbing. The first was how a homeless person attacked a hiker with a machete sometime in the last few years, which I found surprising because I thought that would be a huge story in the news. But I guess the person got away. Just goes to show how much crazy stuff happens you never hear about. Which brings to mind the many people who go missing in national parks every year. In the case of this park, people don't go missing, but apparently it is a popular destination for suicides. The groundskeeper talked about it like, oh yeah, happens all the time. Specifically, there are a bunch of WPA-era gazebos scattered around the park. Some of them really tucked away in the woods and not near a path or anything. Kind of odd. If I remember correctly, that's where many of the suicides have taken place. But the story that stands out. A few years back, a park visitor was walking around and started approaching one of the gazebos, which was tucked away in a little wooded haven. As he got closer, he heard a man's voice laughing hysterically. Then it said, "Do it." When the hiker got closer, there was a woman who had blown her head off with a shotgun. No man to be found. The voice he had heard was just disembodied. After the groundskeeper told me that, I remember getting quiet and he was like, maybe I shouldn't have told you that. Haha. The story checked out when I mentioned it to other folks who worked in the park though. Again, not much to this story, just gives me the creeps until this day. I realize it would make more sense, I guess, if the hiker also heard a gun go off. I'm just relaying what the groundskeeper told me. I don't know how or why a hiker bystander would make up a disembodied voice. That would be super strange. Anyway, the discovery of the body is harrowing enough. Some background. I was a correctional officer before enlisting, and I often spent my time before joining the service on solo hunting and camping trips in the swamps between Texas and Louisiana. When I say camping, I mean just a bag, a gun, and a strong desire to stay the hell away from society. Eventually, I joined the Navy and became a hospital corpsman. I was assigned to 3rd Dental Battalion in Okinawa, Japan, at the Camp Foster Dental Clinic. This is where my experience took place. One night, I was given the overnight watch at the clinic, basically just staying there in case of a dental emergency. Tooth pain, a kid getting hurt, or the occasional Marine who busted his chops with a beer bottle. I'd done the watch a few times before, but this night was different. It was sometime around 2300. I had already locked up the building, grabbed the duty phone, and headed to the back where they'd provided a bed to rest during the night, if needed. I was lying there, unable to sleep, when I heard some shuffling noises. I figured maybe one of the LTs had come into the clinic to do some late-night work. No big deal. I decided to check it out and make sure everything was still secure. As I started my patrol, I thought I saw a little boy at the end of the passageway near the front desk. Thinking a kid had somehow gotten into the clinic, I went after him to make sure he didn't get into anything dangerous. I saw him run into the records department, but when I got there, he was gone. Weirded out, I figured maybe he ran out the other side of the building, so I continued toward the other end. As I got closer to the women's locker room, I heard a shower running. That definitely caught me off guard. I knocked and called out, asking if anyone was in there. I repeated it 3 times before finally announcing that I was entering. When I stepped inside, I realized the lights were off. That was strange. I turned the lights on and walked toward the shower area. Steam was rising from one of the stalls, and the curtain was drawn shut. I announced myself again and pulled the curtain back. Nothing. No water. No steam. The faucet was off and the shower was completely dry. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I noped out of there and went straight back to the duty desk. From then on, every time I had the overnight watch, I'd lock myself in the records department and sleep on the floor. I hated that watch. I've lived in my apartment for 7 years. My next-door neighbour has lived here since the 80s. He's 53, over 2 metres tall and easily 100 kilograms. He was once an artist and university teacher, but after being diagnosed with schizophrenia, his life unravelled. I don't judge people for mental illness, but he's aggressive, unpredictable, and everyone in the building avoids him, including me. The first time we spoke was around 6 months after I moved in. I was 19 and coming home late with a friend. We were tipsy, struggling with the building's faulty door code, when he appeared behind us. "Hello, girls. What are you doing?" he asked, getting way too close. I said we were trying to get inside. He stared at me, smirking, then asked, "Do you live here? Is your apartment number 123 blank?" I nervously said yes. Then he said my name. Hearing it from him made my skin crawl. He helped us open the door and watched us enter my apartment. It was the first time I felt truly unsafe in my own home. A couple months later, my doorbell rang at 6 a.m. I lived alone and had no peephole, so I stayed quiet. 3 hours later, it rang again. Someone had clearly been waiting. I stayed silent, but when I left at 11 a.m., he immediately stepped into the hallway. "I knew you were home," he said. "We need to talk. Everything is under control, but you need to look under your doormat." He spoke nonsense, rambling about things he couldn't explain. I lifted the rug. There was a broken spatula under it. He insisted I hide it for him, hinting he'd done something with it. I ran out of the building without replying. I even heard him chase me briefly before stopping. That evening, he rang again. "I just wanted to apologize," he said. "I have so much to tell you." He talked about a real-life simulation game called Quest, claiming I played a role in it. He said something was hidden in the garden shed and that I needed to come see it. I refused and called my dad. When my dad arrived, the neighbor acted calm and polite. My dad thought I was overreacting, but the next day, the neighbor trashed our hallway, smashed a mailbox wall, a window, and light fixtures. The police and ambulance were called, and he was hospitalized. He had just broken up with his long-time girlfriend. It all spiraled from there. For years after that, he mostly left me alone. But in November 2023, it all started again. He began ringing our doorbell multiple times a day. When I answered, with my boyfriend beside me, he said he was working on a new project and might play music loudly. He was swaying, reeked of alcohol, and held a burnt-out blunt, even though smoking is banned in the building. I asked him not to play music late at night. He smirked and said, "I know. I've heard you play music before." From that point on, he blasted music day and night. The walls literally shook at 3 a.m. We called the police, cut power, banged on his door. Nothing worked. He seemed to feed off the chaos. Whenever my boyfriend asked him to turn it down, he got aggressive. "You're not my neighbor." "She is. If she's bothered, she can come talk to me." I did, but it changed nothing. Around the same time, I started noticing him watching me from his window when I smoked in the garden. He'd come out, ask personal questions, and talk about strange projects, like building a bomb shelter in the basement or a workstation in the garden. Nothing ever came of it. One evening, I saw him dragging trash bags out of the basement. Something felt off. He asked for a lighter and went back inside. A few days later, I was home alone when he rang my doorbell. "Can you come to my apartment?" he asked. "My friend is injured." I asked his friend's name. He hesitated, then gave me one. When I asked what happened, he couldn't answer. "You have to help me," he said. "You don't have a choice." I slammed the door and locked it. Later, he rang again, this time about a dead homeless man outside. "It's all connected," he said. "A robbery. This is all part of it." I didn't understand what he meant. The man had died from the cold. Whether my neighbour was involved or just spiralling, I'll never know. He's known to carry weapons. He once used spiked brass knuckles on a cop and regularly threatens people near bars with a knife. So, when he asked me to come into his apartment, I truly believe he meant to hurt me. There have been countless more incidents, but this post would never end if I told them all. Let's just say, I'm not scared of him the way I used to be, but I'll never stop being cautious, because with him, I never really know what he's capable of. I've lived in southern Nevada my entire life. I know the desert, I know the animals that live in it, but what I saw last night, I have no idea what it was. We'd finally gotten a break from the heat, so around 9:40 p.m., I saddled up my horse for a night ride. The air was cooler, the desert quiet. My dog usually comes with me, but not this time. We did some light work in the arena, then headed out for a short loop through the desert. Night rides are normal for me. I don't use a flashlight. Between the moonlight and barn lights, I see just fine. My horse and I know these trails well. The ride started off like usual. My music was blasting, my horse spooked at a plastic bag, and we headed up a hill I call Sand Hill. Normally we'd go right and loop back home, but tonight I decided to go left, a longer path, adding maybe 10 to 20 more minutes. That's when I felt off, like something was watching. But I ignored it. The night was peaceful. No people, no other riders, no obvious wildlife. Just me, my horse, and the occasional bag blowing in the breeze. About 5 minutes after turning left, I saw something bolt up the hill in front of us. My horse didn't react, which was weird. He always reacts. But even stranger, he started drifting off the path on his own. He's normally dead on with trails, so that spooked me even more. I steered him back on track and tried to shake off the feeling. About a minute later, I noticed something white on the ground to our right. My horse locked onto it like it was the end of the world. I assumed it was a big feed bag. Scary looking, sure, but probably nothing. Still, the unease grew. We kept moving, eventually turning down into a small wash that splits off into two paths home. I nudged him into a trot. I just wanted to get out of there. My dad called, and I answered, casually scanning behind us as we talked. I didn't see anything. But after the call ended, that feeling of being followed came back, stronger this time. So, instead of taking the full loop, I turned early and climbed up the hillside to a shortcut. As we reached the top, the arena lights lit up the path ahead. My horse paused to snack on a bush. For a second, I relaxed. I even laughed and said, "Well, guess nothing was following us if you're stopping to eat, dumbass." Stupid. Because right after that, I looked behind us, and something was there. We'd only been still for a few seconds. Nothing should have been able to sneak up that fast. But behind us, standing dead still, was a dog-like creature. It wasn't big, maybe coyote-sized, but its shape was off. It was thin, almost sickly looking. Its fur blended perfectly with the desert around us. But the ears, they were massive, not coyote ears, way too big. Almost shaped like bull horns, sticking up awkwardly from its small head. That's the part I can't forget. The second I saw it, I panicked. I made my horse book it back to the barn. We tore through the desert and I kept checking behind us, expecting to see it chasing. But there was nothing. What rattles me most is that my horse didn't react. Not until after we stopped. Horses can see nearly 360 degrees, everything except directly behind their tail. And mine's a Mustang. Sharp instincts, tuned to the environment. He didn't hear it, didn't see it. It's like it knew exactly where to stand. Right in the blind spot. I've been trying to rationalize it, tell myself it was just a coyote. But the way it looked, the way it moved, the way it showed up out of nowhere, I don't think it was. When I was 9, I met my best friend Lyle. We bonded instantly. Same classroom, same t-shirt on the first day. We grew up side by side, inseparable. But after 8th grade, we went to different high schools, and like many childhood friendships, ours quietly faded. Years passed. I made new friends, but none ever matched the connection I had with Lyle. Most felt shallow. One friend even became a little obsessive. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call. There was a click, then a voice. "Hey, it's been a while, hasn't it?" "Lyle?" I sat up. "Wow, didn't expect to hear from you. How have you been?" "Good. I mean, good enough. Things change, just thinking about old times. Figured I'd call, we caught up briefly, and he asked if I wanted to meet up that night. Said he was back in town for a bit. I agreed. He said he'd text the place. Later, I got an address, no name, just an odd street I barely recognized. I followed the GPS to a run-down bar tucked between a laundromat and an empty lot. The sign buzzed like it was on its last legs. Inside, the place was nearly empty. I scanned the room until someone at the far end waved. At first, I didn't recognize him. The man had longer, scruffy hair, a broader frame, and lines I didn't remember. But something in his smile, his eyes, felt familiar. "Lyle?" I asked. He grinned too wide. "Hey, so good to see you. You have no idea how long I've waited for this." It felt off, but I smiled. "Yeah, long time." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "I've been through some stuff. Just got out of prison." My stomach dropped. "Wait, what?" He waved it off. "Just a misunderstanding. Totally blown out of proportion." Then he said, "Actually, I was wondering, could I crash at your place?" Just for a week, part of me wanted to say no. But I remembered the Lyle I grew up with, the real Lyle. I sighed. "Yeah, a week's fine." He looked relieved. "Thanks, man. You don't know what this means." Later, as we drove, I had this nagging feeling. So I searched him up. No real photos. But one post had a picture of a car. Same make and model as the one now following me home. Same dent on the fender. He had followed me, quietly, carefully. When we got home, I offered him the couch. He gave me a hug, tight, almost desperate. "Thanks." "Really?" That night, I woke up to a weight on the bed. It was him, lying next to me like it was normal. "Lyle!" "What the hell?" "Sorry," he mumbled. "I must have sleepwalked." Next day, he barely moved. Slept all day. I left for work, uneasy. When I came home, the garage door was open. His car was inside. I hadn't told him to park there. Inside, my drawers had been rifled through. Clothes scattered. Childhood keepsakes. Comics, trophies, school stuff, tossed around the house. My box of old memories was open. Its contents spilled everywhere. "Lyle, what did you do?" I asked. He just stared at me. Angry, I cleaned up and carried the box back to the garage. As I passed his car, a terrible smell hit me. Sick, rotting. I followed it to the trunk. Inside was a body, decomposing. The face, Lyle, the real Lyle. My knees buckled. I barely turned before something slammed into me from behind. Darkness. I woke up bound, the room spinning. Across from me stood the man I thought was Lyle. He smiled coldly. "Do you recognize me now?" "What? I'm not Lyle," he said, stepping forward. "I'm Greg. You remember? Your obsessive friend? Always hanging around?" I stared at him, heart pounding. "I watched you for years, learned everything about you. You never noticed." His voice dropped. "I went to prison. Minor stuff. But while I was in there, I planned." He smiled wider. Pretending to be Lyle was the easiest way in. You'd never say no to him. Terror gripped me. Why? Because I wanted to be close to you. Always. And now, we can be together. Forever. He pulled a knife from his jacket and, without warning, stabbed himself. Then he lunged at me, pressing the blade to my side. "We'll die together," he whispered. I fought hard, got one hand free, slammed my elbow into his head. He collapsed. Shaking, I scrambled to call 911. "There's an intruder. He tried to kill me. He's here." The cops arrived fast. Greg was still breathing but barely conscious. They took him away in handcuffs and bandages. The nightmare was over. Later, I found a folded note in his jacket. Just a few words, scribbled in shaky handwriting, "To my world." It was meant for me. My hands trembled as I tore it to pieces. Some part of me still hears his voice, pretending to be someone I trusted. But that person is gone. And the real Lyle had been gone long before the call ever came.
Hello everyone, I'm back with another story. Since the first post did pretty good, I figured I'd share another one of my odd experiences. So back when I was a RTTO tow truck driver, when someone had an on-call shift, you have one of two options. One, you could stay at your home and take calls from there as long as you lived within a 30-minute response area, or two, you could sleep at the shop in the employee break room. I'd usually stay at the shop just so I didn't have to keep driving from my house to the yard when I got calls late at night. It was just easier, honestly, but this story that I'm about to share changed all of that. It was about around November 2023, and as usual, we had a long day, and it was my on-call shift. Luckily for me, whenever I had on-call shifts, I'd usually sleep in my co-worker's trailer at the yard because I didn't really want to stay in the huge shop. This night, however, I chose, for whatever reason, I can't remember, to sleep in my truck outside of the barbed wire yard instead of sleeping in my buddy's trailer. I was very tired, so I hopped in my truck's back seat and got ready to pass out. One thing to keep in mind is that our yard has been broken into before, and we sometimes get random homeless people walking around, so I always stay armed no matter what. It was a foggy night too, so that helped me fall asleep since I love the fog. The ambient atmosphere it gives off is just so soothing and basically put me to sleep. I feel asleep around 12:30 to 1, which gave me plenty of time to get some good sleep. I'm usually a deep sleeper, so when I randomly woke up at around 3 a.m., if I had to guess, was quite a bit odd. I didn't know what woke me up. At first, I thought I had gotten a call for a tow, but when I checked my phone, there was nothing, so I just shrugged it off and passed back out. Come morning time, I'm very tired still and get out of my truck to start my day, and that's when I noticed a bunch of handprints all over my truck and windows. Very confused and groggy that's. When my co-worker comes over and we start talking, I obviously asked him about the handprints all over my truck and why they were there. That's when he very confusingly says, "What you don't remember? Remember what I say." He then told me that last night he was woken up at 3 a.m. to his dog barking. He continues to tell me that he walked out of his trailer with his shotgun thinking someone was trying to break into the yard, only to see a person standing at the back window of my truck staring in. The person then just ran away into the night once he saw my buddy. Sufficient to say, I was chilled to my bone. That creep had been walking around my truck and watching me sleep for God knows how long. Thank God he didn't try to open my door, or otherwise it might have gotten really ugly. After that, I never slept in my truck again, and then started to do my on-call shifts at my house. Whenever I did have to sleep at the shop, I only ever slept in his trailer with him. To this day, it is one of the most downright disgusting things that's ever happened to me. And believe me, I have experienced a lot of weird stuff.